Yeah, see, there you go.
There you go.
That's exactly what we want. We want to be able to have you on the edge of the screen. That's exactly what we want right there. Stop the screen. Share the screen. Screen. Share. Okay, we're up in the corner. That's where we need to be. Take that one out. Go back here. From the beginning. All right, now you'll need to replace your drive with that drive.
Okay.
And all right, let's see if your remote, is it turned on the side, the green?
Yeah.
All right, see if it'll work now. Please don't tell me. Let me see it. There it goes.
Okay.
Make sure it works for you. There we go. All right, so we are on the screen. We can see you at the podium, at the rostrum. I said we could. Why can't I see you now? There you are.
Okay, I can do that.
All right, so take one more chair and move it out of the way and slide down. I don't think there's enough rope left of this thing here. Let's see. Okay, let's see. Let's see how much further you can come this way and still have you on the screen. Oh yeah, we got you on the screen now. There you go. Just had to move it over a little bit.
Yeah.
I want everybody to be able to see you. I didn't say anything yesterday because I wasn't here, but I didn't like it that Tanner stood over in the corner and you couldn't see him. All you could hear was in his voice. Because he was kind of, I think he must have been kind of reading. His voice was kind of going in and out.
Okay.
And I was like, I know that's just a minor thing, but you need to be a little better than that.
Yeah.
All right, you got your stuff over in the corner. Everybody over here. We're all good on that. You're good.
Okay.
Okay.
And the questions are in the very back. Two
Okay.
sets of questions.
Let me go.
I say, where's the freshman set? Do I
All
go
right,
down?
you have to go down. So
Do I have to go out of the building or just go?
no.
Okay, good.
All right. My office is right here. Right there. All right. Middle of the hall. Set of steps to go down. You get the bottom step, make a left. It's all the way to that end of the building. That's on the right.
Good morning.
Good morning.
I'm gonna cut it off in just a second. Today's hat day. I'm not gonna have the soda, I promise.
No, you look so cute. Keep it on. That's twice in a week I've seen you with a cute hat. You hopped on early. That's awesome.
You know, I'm always so tech scary. I said, oh, I have to make sure I have this right.
I know. I showed up 2 hours early today. I was worried about, am I going to get here? Do I know where I'm going?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I look forward to it. It's going to be phenomenal because you always are. One step closer to the goal.
Seriously, right? Oh.
Mm-hmm. And you're ready. You've been ready for a year.
Y'all know that feeling. You know that. Yeah, I'm so excited, like the whole cohort, so it sounds like that they're gonna be able to at least hop on at some point.
Mhm. Right, I'll be here the whole time. I already said, can't go to PLCs, I'm gonna be in my office.
Man,
Door
you
closed.
PLCs is a big deal. Thanks for letting you.
Fine, they're doing good, and you're gonna be phenomenal. Phenomenal. All right, well, I'm gonna turn off my camera for a second. I'm gonna do something real quick, but I'm on here.
You're good.
Can't wait,
Okay.
can't wait.
Where in the world are you? Oh. So Vera just want to know who's gonna be here today. She wants to see. I think this is the first time Vera's been here. 10. Nine. One of the reasons I call it now this is I'm not confused. I would like to support on finding that based off of the qualitative analysis. I think now, all of a sudden, for me, I mean, I want to, my case study got identified. A large data that I would like to have. I think it's also single note is $3,500. I think that would be.
So excited. Yeah, you come up right up this way. I'm so happy to see you. Was it a bad drive? No, but I got started pretty early. Yeah. So I didn't have to wait. Okay. No, you're fine. Look at you in green. I love it. How are you, Vera? So happy to see you. I know.
Now we'll celebrate after.
Well, that's what I'm talking
Oh,
about.
you're right,
I'm
we're
proud
right
of
here.
you. Yeah.
All right. I didn't know whether I needed to bring anything. Where do you want?
Wherever, I'm gonna stand right there, but it's just you and Lynn here, so.
Okay. It is cold. in
It
here.
really got cold.
It always is in this room. I didn't know whether I needed to bring my laptop or not. So how are you?
We're gonna, ready to get this thing over with. So
I
you're gonna see
know.
my hubby, he's coming, my mom.
Oh,
So
good.
yeah, those are my,
I'm glad. I am
Yeah.
so glad.
at first he's like, because I said, do you wanna go look at this? What am I gonna go for? And I don't know what you're gonna be talking about.
good,
Yeah.
good. Yeah. I was talking to Dr. Stedman. Did you have him?
No.
He and I do a lot of team teaching
Okay.
in the males program. And I told him, he called me this morning. I said, you know where I am? I'm sitting down here at the McDonald's across from Gardner Webb. I had to go to the bathroom so bad. And he said, what are you doing? I said, I'm not chairing this one. But he says, well, then why did you go? Why did you? I said, Vera,
I appreciate it.
Vera.
I told my husband, I said, she's coming all the way this way.
It's only about an hour and 20 minutes.
Well, that's all.
But
All a drive. I love it.
if you can get down that mountain's what just terrifies me with
Yeah.
all those big transfer trailers, tractor
Yeah.
trailers. And,
Yeah. Those are the things that scare me too.
yeah. How long did it take you to get here?
It was, I feel like an hour and 40, because I left early. I was afraid I'm gonna be the one that got lost, and then y'all gonna try to have to find me, and then
Where
try to
is
talk to me off the ledge. So I was like, I'm gonna get there early. I ended up getting here before 8, so 2 hours before. So it was like in the car, just, it is what it is.
Well, I would rather do that than rush in
Well, that's the
here.
whole thing. I didn't want that feeling, because I'm like, that might set me off a little bit. And
Well, it does me.
yeah, I know me. That's why I was like,
Yeah.
and again, I leave the house usually about 6:20. So I only left 20 minutes earlier than I normally do to go to work, to be there by 8, but because it's what, 45 minutes from work.
Yeah.
So it was just a little extra drive, but I don't mind it.
Are you gonna go back to work today?
So I wasn't, but then they convinced me that I should go. So I'm like, oh. So then he was like, what are you doing after? I said, whatever you all say we're doing after, and then I'm gonna go back.
Well, you get to celebrate with some of your colleagues.
Yeah, well, they're doing like a Friendsgiving, and we're new to the department, and so
Yeah.
it's one of those things that they're like, plus there's 3 of us that defended within,
That's so cool.
yeah, you had yesterday was a coworker who's in the building. So I didn't start with these people, so I didn't know, and literally, we've been in that department maybe now a month. And
Yeah.
so
You
by the
need
time we
to.
got there, you saw the executive director I report to went through, and I thought she was like done. I even put in my phone doctor, and she's like, oh no, I'm where you at. I was done with the proposal. I was like, oh, I had no idea, because they're a semester behind us. They'll
Okay.
finish the classes this semester. So I was like, oh, okay, well. So, yeah.
Well, okay. So Brittany, I turned all Brittany's stuff in. I'm so glad we talked.
Yeah.
And so Dr. Law's called me back about a couple of things in her methodology, and
Yeah.
he's her methodologist, and he said, but we can work on that proposal defense. I said, okay. And I said, okay, so how do we hear if Dr. has
Mhm.
approved? Oh, he went on a tear. And I'm like, so he and Dr. Lamb have been just fighting
Mhm.
about this stuff.
Yeah, well, he had me show up in one of his classes to talk to people, because they need to hear how this is gonna look. And he's like, I'm not trying to throw you on the bus, but people pay money and they need to know what the rules are, because it keeps changing, so.
And it just gets more and more convoluted.
Yeah.
So at the end of our conversation, he says, she's got under 20%, she's got no more than 2 quotes per chapter. What was it? She's got all her required pages. We're gonna go. I don't care whether you hear anything or not. So when I told Brittany that, she kind of took a deep breath. I said, Brittany, he assured me he would have us covered.
Mhm.
And then we got the notification from Julie May. So I'm assuming that's how we know.
That's how you know, because I didn't hear anything. We submitted on a Friday. It was Monday afternoon, and so I asked him, I said, how do you know? I'm the first to go through this.
Yeah.
I said, and as I'm learning, I'm telling my entire cohort, like, hey, from my perspective.
Dr. Evans, how are you today?
Great, how are
I'm
you?
excited to be here.
Well, good.
I'm filling
I
all
am
these
too.
calls and texts congratulating Vera.
Uh,
That was
is your
Shantae
cohort gonna
Hinkle.
listen
You
in?
know Shantae?
I don't know that name either.
I'm trying to think who this is.
Are a lot of you
Vera,
couples-
Shante Hinkle is in Gaston County Schools. Shante Hinkle's in Gaston County School. She's part of the cohort for curriculum.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Stacy, so she knows you through me.
Hey, Stacy.
Hello, hi, Dr. Evans. How are
Put
you?
the camera on so she can see your cute hat.
Well, I'm gonna take it off. Today's hat day at my school, and so
Oh, that looks
Oh,
so
nice.
good. You
Thank
changed
She
you
even
well.
wore a pink one. I got to go visit her school last week. I'm like, twice in a week. It was tea. So she had pink.
that was tourist day.
Okay.
That was Steve Laws on the phone. He's
Okay.
congratulating you, and he won't be here till later today. He's got
Okay.
a
Hey
family.
Vera, I'm here too. I may not be here long, but I'm here.
Hey, Dawn.
I'm at a school, so I'm kind of multitasking today.
I love it. I appreciate you.
You guys have really done a good job keeping it together.
Seriously. Yeah. You know, I'm hosting Christmas, like our get together at the new
Oh,
house. So it'll be the first time like I have people at the house and I'm like, nothing like my cohort family.
Yeah,
So,
there you go. All
yeah,
right.
yeah. So my husband's gonna jump on. At first he was like, no, but he's like, yeah.
Oh, he needs to.
And my mom's coming, so she just sent a text.
Is she gonna come in
Sorry.
person?
No, she's in Virginia.
Okay, I thought she'd been far away.
Yeah, she comes back home, I think tomorrow.
Yeah. Are you going up there for Christmas or is she coming down?
No, she comes down, they have the house here. She just is up there
Oh,
to
okay.
teach, so she has the place there, so.
Yeah.
She's there, but then when they have Christmas break, then she will come back, but then she's gotta go back because she got tenure and a promotion, so
Oh,
she's gotta
wonderful.
go and be there like middle of December, December 13th. I was like, okay, well, it's a good reason to go back. And then
Yeah.
she'll go see the house and then. Found all kinds of texts this morning.
Oh, I bet.
Even got one from a friend in Ohio. It was somebody I had met through work. And it was like a partnership between the company I was working for and another company. And so he's like, oh, you can be part of the club, huh? I was like, I'm going through the process. So he was the one who sat there to say at one point, stop, look at your three, because your three guides your two. And I was like, oh. And then of course he tells me, he says, oh, it helped me.
Okay,
It helped me go a little bit
Good.
faster.
good.
Because you can go anywhere with
Oh.
this topic.
You
Really.
could get really broad quickly.
Yeah, and that was my worry, like, how do I stay with what I need? Because then I was like, well, is this important? This should be important. But it was all like the implementation or like the teacher stuff, it really didn't align to like the
Yeah.
leadership pieces. And
Yeah,
again, you don't know what you don't know until like you go through the process.
right. Exactly, exactly. I'm excited for you.
I'm like, put this behind me and then let's into the next thing. IRB is gonna be fun.
Oh, I'm sure. And who's your other person coming?
So they're gonna be online, so you have, my content person is Dr. Kimberly Lane, and so
Okay.
she is like the director, senior director of like the magnet program, so she oversees those 54 schools.
Okay.
And out of the 54, 4 are dual immersion. And that's
Okay.
so she knows dual immersion.
Good.
So that's, we have Dr. Jill Payne, she's at Gaston County. She's executive director of student services. So that's,
Okay.
so there's 4 committee members.
Okay.
So there's 7. And Thomasine.
There's Thomasine. Your mic on.
That's what
All
I-
right. Let's see. Where are my glasses? I'm gonna have to wear these now when I want to see.
That's crazy, isn't it?
I'm sorry if I go crazy. This thing has been. Oh, there's Mama.
It's Tawanda.
And there's,
And there's Dr. Lee.
all right. And
The committee members.
where is,
Saw Jill.
did you see Jill?
Yeah. There she is. Hey, Jill.
There she is.
Good morning.
Good morning. All right, that's good. Well, we're a couple minutes early, but we're going to go ahead and get started. I want to welcome everybody here today for Vera Woolard's proposal defense. I want to recognize some folks with us here on campus today is Dr. Kathy Revis. Welcome, Dr. Revis. Dr. Revis is retired Associate Superintendent of Henderson County Schools. She's a current school board member in Henderson County, and currently she's an adjunct for the College of Education. Most specifically, she's a lead instructor in our Masters of School Administration program. Online joining us today is Dr. Jill Payne, also a committee member. She's Executive Director of Student Services for Gaston County Schools. She's a current adjunct, Gardner-Webb College of Education. She's an instructor also in the MSA program. We'd like to welcome Dr. Kimberly Lane, Senior Director of Magnet and Curriculum Enhancement Program for Wake County Public School System. She's Vera's content expert on her dissertation committee. I didn't see her, but we welcome Dr. Heather Lemons, Director of Exceptional Children, Gaston County Schools, and Dr. Lemon is our recorder today for Vera. I see Vera's mom, Dr. Rosalind Vargas. Welcome today, Dr. Vargas. And did I see, if he's not here, there he is, Mr. Jeffrey Woolard, Vera's husband. So we welcome you all and all of her classmates. I see Justin and a lot of them here with us today. And we welcome you all, and we'll go ahead and get started now. For those of you who are joining us today, if you have questions, we'll reserve a time afterward for questions, and we'll let Vera go ahead and start her presentation. I hope that you can all see the slides on the, can everybody see the share, see the slides? We're good. All right, Vera, take it away.
Well, good morning, and thank you everyone for joining today. So we're going to talk about growing sustainable quality DLI programs, the key impacts of leadership preparation, training, and support. So we're going to start with chapter 1, the problem, the purpose, and the significance of the study. And so next to teacher efficacy, school leadership is the second most influential element when it comes to student achievement and motivation. So let's tell you a little bit about dual language immersion. So it really started in my home state of Florida in 1963 in Dade County. And then since that time, you can see that dual language has touched a lot of the US. And when we think about our beautiful home state of North Carolina, we have approximately 234 DLI programs in North Carolina. And just over the last 2 years, we've seen that explosion in growth of these programs in 2 years to 94 programs. And so a lot of this has to do with the research in the background of talking about how this type of instruction, it's a language model in which for your English language learners, it is effective bilingual educational model, and it does and has proven to increase student achievement and closing the gap, learning gaps. And so again, the program does require a multi-pronged approach, which we're going to dig into in just a little bit here. And so the purpose of this study really is, when you think about dual language immersion, there is lots and extensive research on the planning and the implementation, how to train teachers, how to hire teachers, how to recruit teachers. But what's lacking is the specific leadership behaviors and practices that are necessary for that program preparation. Also the internal and external supports, as well as professional development, that should be paramount for principals in order to lead and maintain those quality, sustainable DLI programs. And so when you think about the problem really is, you have an explosion of all of these wonderful programs. We know how to implement, we know how to hire, how to recruit, but what we're not looking at is how to support those who are in leadership. Again, it is a unique program, And it does require a leader of a school to understand the curriculum, because you're not just taking traditional curriculum, you also have bilingual. So whatever that target language is, you have to understand how to select and how to implement specific curriculum. There is pedagogy that you have to think about, as well as those teacher qualifications, that you're putting the right people with those students to ensure success. Again, from a district perspective, wouldn't it be nice to know what type of behaviors or practices are expected for leaders so we can match that for our programs? Again, sustainability will be threatened by the lack of that PD for those administrators, the lack of funding, sometimes the lack of having those qualified teachers. And again, even PD is important for teachers, teaching students within this unique program. And so this study will really consider the ways that principals and or school-based leaders are expected to lead and to maintain and grow quality sustainable DL programs. And again, right now, there is a lack of preparation, training, and support. That's what studies have said. We have not put a focus or a lens on that. And this is why this study was chosen. Let's look at the leaders of bilingual education of what are that specialized knowledge and skills that can handle, because dual language immersion programs does have some complexities and uniqueness compared to traditional classes. And so here's just some of the research that's out there to prove and kind of justify why there's the need for a study like this. Principals do experience, right, definitely different demands, and we need sufficient leadership in order to build capacities to meet those demands of the program and the needs of the students. Without the proper training and support and preparation, principals then have to rely on their own perception of how to lead only by what they know. And again, principal preparation and those supports, internal, external, or PD, should address those underlying barriers and factors that can prevent leaders from making that progress towards that sustainability. And lastly, wouldn't it be nice to have those characteristics so that you can match and align practices? Because if we find what's working, then you can share that with others to, again, continue the growth and sustainability. So here are the 3 questions that we're looking to answer within this study. And so with question 1, what are the specific leadership behaviors and practices do principals need to possess in order to sustain those quality DLI programs? Secondly, what are the internal and external supports and training that is needed for principals to sustain those programs? And lastly, how does the internal and external supports and training impact principals? So here's the conceptual framework. And so you can see kind of like this circle because it brings it all together. There is the behavioral aspect and there is change. And when we think of change, it's really that transformational leadership. And so those are the 2 frameworks that I'm bringing together. And so when you look at this picture, you have the principal in the center, because this principal ultimately impacts and has those outcomes for the programs. So if we look over to the left-hand side, this is going to be Guber-Getzel's social system model. What it's saying as a principal, you make those decisions based off your need, disposition, and your personality, and what you want to see those, accomplished within your school building. But yet, as a leader and you work for an organization and system, you do have expectations and roles that the district are going to tell you that they want to accomplish. So you have to take all of that into consideration. That influences the principal's decision. When you look at the right, you have another framework of Fullen, Michael Fullen, his leadership change. His framework was in 2001 and has done some revisions as early now as in 2018. And so for him, what he's saying is, in order to change and meet the demands that schools and just life brings these days when it's in a school system, is that there are 5 change themes. And so you have moral purpose, relationship building, cohesive making, knowledge building and sharing, and understanding change. And all of these themes do impact how the principal functions. Fullen also talks about the internal and supports. There has to be internal and external supports that affect the commitment, and you have to have a commitment with dual immersion. It is a unique program. It is none like any other bilingual education. It's showing the research. It's really bringing together for children that it's okay to maintain your native language and learn content through that native language, but then learning English at the same time. And so through that commitment, principals make those decisions and impacts on how to continue to grow children, to grow their programs and sustain them for longevity. So what are the expected outcomes of this study? Well, the integration of internal and external supports to assist principals in leading those programs. A good to fit test will demonstrate equal proportions. And lastly, principals to confirm the need for program preparation, the internal, external supports, and training as a means of growing those quality, sustainable DLI programs. So when we think of the significance of this study, the findings should strengthen our awareness of what are those specific leadership behaviors, the practices, and the supports that district leaders need to consider. And at the same time, as the principal of a dual immersion, what are those positive outcomes? How would the alignment to program goals and the sustainability of programs based on behaviors and practices? Lastly, districts can benefit in that decision-making process, considering matching that leadership, potentially informing policy in the future. And lastly, of course, extending the body of knowledge and potentially filling any gaps in the research. And so that leads us now into the literature review, chapter 2. And so just to give you a brief history for those who are not familiar with dual language immersion, it is a bilingual education model. And so dual immersion specifically really does allow for an English language learner to learn content through their native language and at the same time English, and then connections are made because they're hearing it and seeing it in two languages to make connections. At the same time, there's very specific strategies that teachers utilize to make connections to the content. A little bit of background on the policies and guidelines. We start with the Bilingual Education Act. With this act, policy was made and it really mandated bilingual education. It was the first time that funding was provided so that we can look at curriculum, instructional material, training for teachers, as well as how do we address parent involvement. Parents wanted to be in the understanding and knowledge of what's happening at school, and especially as a second language. When you think about law, we start with the first Supreme Court case, and so that's Law versus Nichols, and what that talked about, and the most important takeaway is that it was equal access to curriculum. And so there are specific instructional practices and strategies, and it was the first time that it was okay to look at content being taught in a student's native language. By the time that Reagan was in office, we start to see a shift where bilingual education kind of went to the wayside a little bit because there was this movement of English only. English only is the way to teach children. Forget about native language. We focus on the English. You keep your native language at home. And then what started to happen is kids started dropping the native language and they only spoke English. So they couldn't communicate with family who were outside of English. Then we have a turn with a Court of Appeals case. And so in this case, it really focused on the effective criteria to meet the needs of ESL students. And so again, it brought back bilingual education. And this is where you start to see the shift of accepting dual immersion, where you get content in two languages in a school setting. And then with the No Child Left Behind, which I know all of my educator friends on here know lots about, it's the first time that you see ESL students not being excluded for assessments. Accountability is there, and at the same time, it is allowing for equitable and high quality resources and opportunities. And when you look at the approaches to bilingual education, while subtractive, it's kind of what it sounds, it's subtractive, taking away, it was taking away the opportunity to be instructed in two languages. Dual language immersion is actually considered an additive simply because you're adding that component of two languages to learn, and it is accepted. And there's research to say it's actually really good best practice. So when we think about dual language, there's two models, and the models are really based on the amount of time that a child will spend in a second language. It also has to do with enrollment percentages, and it really has to do with demographics. So when we think of one way, you're going to have very limited amount of English language learners. This is an opportunity for students to take and understand and learn a second language. So you'll see lots of non-Spanish speaking or non-Mandarin, whatever the language is, first 2 years being immersed into that language. So if Spanish is the target language, you get Spanish for 2 years. Even though you don't speak Spanish, 90% of your instruction is in Spanish, 10%. Recess, lunch, anything outside of that classroom counts as the 10% is when you're in English. The rest of the time you're in Spanish. What that does is build the foundation for you. When you get into second grade, now you shift to what they call a 50-50 model. Half of your instruction is in English and half is in Spanish. When you think about two-way, this is when you see highly populated ESL. The goal is to really have half EL students and the other half is your English speaking students. The purpose of this is to have an expert. So if I'm a Spanish speaker and instructions in Spanish, I'm going to be and feel successful. I'm the expert. It's in my target language. But although I speak it, I'm actually going to read and I'm going to write. So with dual immersion, you really get the opportunity to be bilingual, biliterate, and bicultural. So no matter what model you choose, the goal is you are going to understand two languages, be able to communicate verbally, written, and of course you can even read it. With these models, it is really based on, like I said, allotment of time in the language, but it's really driven by your enrollment of students. And so what are those benefits? Well, there is a such thing as the bilingual brain. And so here's a picture of it. It really helps foster, not just you have the skill of a second language and being able to communicate, but it has proven that you have deep, strong thinking skills, critical thinking skills. You have problem-solving skills. You are more accepting of others' culture and just differences. Besides the bilingual brain, at the same time, it is going to allow you academically. So what happens is the first 2 years, it's foundational, and then you start with the two languages. From there, studies have shown that by the time that they take an end of grade assessment, they start outperforming their peers. Think about the brain. It's signaling, it's going back and forth. You're hitting all sections of the brain, and therefore you start outperforming your peer on any given assessment. There was even studies done when you got to the age of college and taking SAT scores, 100 points difference. So the bilingual brain is a thing, and it is a wonderful opportunity to grow. So when you think about from a leadership perspective, how do I sustain and support a program? And so here are the 4 things that are key. So you have the guiding principles. Anybody who's looking to implement or start and plan or consider dual language immersion, there were several researchers that got together and they decided to create a toolkit, which is in paper form on the CAL website. So that's Center of Applied Linguistics. You can grab and utilize this. And there are 7 strands for you that have the areas in which a principal should be focusing on. And so it does contribute to the success and sustainability of DLI programs. What it does, it talks about all these different areas. There's some checklists, some ideas for you, but what it doesn't do is talk about the actual leaders' behaviors and practices. When you get to think about principles, that PD is needed because leaders do require to possess those certain skills and attributions to promote that organization and build instructional capacity within these programs. So we have to have a deep knowledge and understanding of the commitment of methodology and pedagogy. You have to understand how students will learn 2 languages. How do you learn how to read in Spanish is very different than how you learn to read in English. So we start with the alphabet. We start in certain ways. We might start with vowels and then we'll go to consonants, not in Spanish. We start with vowels and then we have certain blending sounds. So you have to understand those things to help guide teachers and understanding of the curriculum. We have to build capacity of those external and internal resources. And lastly, you have to have a commitment for this longevity and sustainability of the program. When you think of the internal and external supports, well, internal, think of infrastructures within a given school district. As a leader, you do have to consider curriculum materials, any supplement resources. Thinking about, just for example, a classroom library. A classroom library of a dual language has to have both English and Spanish. You're growing biliterate, bilingual students. They have to be able to read and write and communicate in both languages to show that the program, is doing its job. As a school-based leader or district leader, you do have to consider those allocation of funds, the resources, the training, the staff qualifications, all that come with this program. So you have to be intentional and forward planning and thinking. When you think about external supports, well, sometimes you do have to rely on individuals or collective groups outside of the program. So sometimes you will see in many of these studies that they were consulting companies where they helped with program monitoring support, any kind of recruitment, and of course the hiring pipeline. Research talks about how to have a native speaker because native speakers have an understanding of how to teach kids how to read in their native language. Sometimes our bilingual educators were taught how to read in English and don't know how to teach kids how to have those foundational skills in Spanish. And lastly, as a leader, you do have to understand how to not just allocate and secure funds, but you got to learn how to prioritize in your school building. You do have dual immersion within your building, but you also have traditional classes. So you have to understand how to prioritize and balance as a leader. So thinking about theories, there were several leadership theories to look at. And so specifically, there are 3 that this study to look at. So we start with behavioral leadership. And so we start with Guba-Getzel model, which you saw me reference and how this was utilized. Again, as a leader, you are driven by what your district's goals and expectations are, plus what you believe and want to see as your own. But it did focus on also Kurt Lewin, 1939, because there are behaviors that he speaks about. And so you have autocratic, democratic, and laissez-faire. And again, all these behaviors he talks about, but there's also the strengths and the weaknesses of the of a leader. This was not selected simply because as a leader of a unique program, Guba-Getzel understands that there's influences from top kind of down, and at the same time, understanding the influence of outcomes and commitment when it comes to dual immersion. That led to then the leadership, situational leadership. And so you have the first theories in 1970, Fiedler. And so for him, it was that behaviors are dependent on the organization's circumstances. So thinking about situational. Well, when you get to 1988, when you have Herscher and Blanchard, he really talks about the level readiness and the appropriate styles, but he bases the behaviors on 3 areas, that task behavior. So as a leader, what kind of guidance and direction am I providing? When we think of that supportive, teachers need that emotional and social support. And lastly, you have the maturity level. And so of course, you're talking about how are your followers performance on meeting any task or objective or functions. And lastly, you have the transformational leadership. And again, you're transforming culture and engaging the organizational members and obtaining objectives and goals. And so we start with Bass and Aviol in 1995. And so for them, they start talking about like there's a grounds for evidence and creating awareness of other people's goals. But when I think about the uniqueness of dual language immersion, it really spoke to the 5 themes of change: moral purpose, understanding change, that relationship building, the knowledge building and sharing, and of course that cohesive making, because this is what helps an organization go through complex changes. And as I said, as dual immersion, there's lots of complexity and uniqueness. And so that was a framework that was chosen. So just to kind of recap, here's what the GUBA Getzel model looks like. It's that social system, and it is showing you again, the individual, its personality and needs disposition, and of course, as a district, the institution, what are their roles and expectations for you? And then to the right-hand side, this is Fullen. Again, 5 themes of change, the commitment, talking about the internal and external supports, and of course, your results. The more good things happen, the fewer bad things that happen. And that leads us to methodology. And so in this particular study, we are going to do a mixed method. It is qualitative instrument, so it is a Likert scale. It is based on the guiding principles DLI toolkit. These are the 7 areas that have been proven to be successful for growing and sustaining. It is going to be closed-ended instruments, about 39 questions, focus on those 7 areas. Then you have your quantitative instrument where we're going to dig a little bit deeper with open-ended questions for addressing and aligned to all 3 questions that were on that screen about the leadership behaviors and practices, as well as the internal, external support and the PD that is needed. And so when you think about what type of design, I'm going with the convergent mixed method. It is a 1 phase, and it takes the 2 separate surveys and it sends it to principals. And so once the data comes back, it will be merged so that this way results can be interpreted and compared. The expected outcome is when this data is collected and analyzed, I'm going to either confirm or disconfirm the leadership behaviors and practices, as well as the external and internal supports and PD that is necessary in growing those sustainable DLI programs. Now, typically, outside of a DL program, it would be wonderful to do a group or focused study, but DLI is unique. There's a small population in every district. Sometimes you may see 8 out of 54 schools, you may see out of 118, 4. It's very small population where you have to be competitive. This allows within this school district, and you have these programs, sometimes they'll be considered as choice or a magnet. You'll hear that, those terms. It's under the umbrella of that. And so what happens is you start vetting for the same families. So putting people together in the same room when you're trying to pull the same types of family can kind of feel competitive. And then, as you know, self-reporting is the least form of data collection. And with that said, you want to collect the most truthful and honest type of survey results. And so this will be done anonymously, both the qualitative and the quantitative. So won't know names, won't know what area. And so showing you next, this is what it looks like. There are going to be 3 districts with 13 potential participants at the elementary level. We are covering 2 of the 3 regions within North Carolina. And again, a purposeful sampling was conducted because I'm looking to attain quality sampling, fully understanding the nuances within this field of the study. And again, this is what my accessible population is. And again, everyone who is participating potentially could benefit and or be affected by the results in these findings. You can see the location. You have the Piedmont region and also the Coastal Plain region. And again, a variety of program types, anywhere from the 1-way to 2-way. And as you can see, lots of 2-way because again, the population of most of our schools have a high population of EL students. And again, for those who are not in the term of EL, I realize I did not say it, English language learner. And nowadays we call them MLs, which is multilingual learners, to encompass all of our kids. So that has been a change. Lastly, when we think about the analysis and integration of these 2 databases, here are the questions and topics again. My RQ1, my research question 1 is on leadership behaviors and practices. The R2, again, is the needed internal and external support and training. And lastly, what are those impacts? And so when you think about the behaviors, remember that's a Likert scale. I don't think I said it before, but this is already survey that has been validated. It is a 4-point Likert scale. Adjustments have been made. I'm looking to capture the frequency of the big principal's behaviors. So that is where I'm seeking permission to adjust the Likert scale that she has developed. And again, less questions than she did. Again, 39 questions. The qualitative Likert scale will also be used for the RQ2, in addition to the qualitative survey, which again is open-ended. And all of these questions are aligned to the theoretical frameworks of Michael Fullen and Guber Getzel. And lastly, when we think about the impacts, it's going to be those open-ended questions, again, following the same framework. Just before moving on, there are 3 merging options to select from. It is a side-by-side analysis, a data transformation, and of course, a joint display of data. So in the data collection process, I have chosen the Pearson chi-square test, where I'm going to be measuring, as I mentioned earlier, the principal's frequency of implementing those 7 identified leadership behaviors and practices. And those are the 7: program structure, curriculum, instruction, assessment, accountability, staff quality and PD, family and community, and lastly, the support and resources. And so again, the convergent will promote the opportunity to developably fully understand the changes that are required for this marginal group of principals through the collective analysis and the analysis of both data. I want to make sure doing this that I'm ensuring the credibility and validation. So there will be some cross-referencing and triangulation of data. So the goodness to fit will allow for a description of how those 2 observations, those 2 tools are distributed between those groups of principals. So determine if my frequencies observed equally match, or are they significantly diverse? And then are those qualitative variables, are they converted, making sure into categorical variables? And again, there's 2 expected. I expect equal proportion, but there could be a chance that it is different proportions, but those are the 2 expectations when you do fitness to good tests. Just to go back for a second, there is another assessment besides the goodness to fit, which was the test of independence, but that was not deemed appropriate simply because I am looking at the same population and demographic of people. The test of independence is really focused on when you have different groups and variables, okay? So what are the expected outcomes for this study? Well, to add to the body of knowledge, but at the end of this, the convergence evidence is going to help with the development of a professional growth plan for principals. And lastly, a list of recommended dispositional best practices. So again, it's that task relationship behaviors that deem appropriate and have helped principals to be successful in growing and leading leading their dual immersion programs. And so just to leave you with this last quote is that DLI programs are unique as they address the aggrandized bilingualism, biliteracy, and biculturalism, and that the leaders of the DL program need to possess that specialized leadership behaviors and practices, the understanding of that theory behind the program models, and then of course the knowledge of immersion pedagogy and that strong commitment to their program goals. And that concludes my presentation.
Very good.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. I am going to create a breakout room now for all of our visitors. And so I'm going to put you all, if you will go there, and I will keep the committee with Vera, and we'll start with, make sure I get this right now, Vera.
Yeah.
Hmm.
I wonder if Brittany stepped away.
Do mine.
We got 1, 2, 3, 4. We're good there. All right. Brittany, are you still with us? If you will go to the breakout room. There we go.
Okay.
All right. I'll just leave that like that. All right. Thank you all again for being here today. So we have our committee. So this is the time where we will have any questions that you have for Vera about her presentation today.
I'll just say, Vera, you did a phenomenal job. I was very impressed with the knowledge that you brought to the table. And I love that you're working on professional development plans for principals. So you did a great job. The questions I had when looking and reading, you answered during your presentation. So good job for that.
Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Payne.
I would agree if I could echo that. Excellent job of research, and certainly the presentation was spot on. I do have a couple of questions, and maybe I just missed it, Vera, but I think you and I have talked a lot about the mindset of principals as they enter into this work. Was that in the guiding principles? I wasn't able to capture all of those, but is that something that you're going to be looking at? Is their mindset as they go into this work?
So I'm looking at the behaviors and the practices, and I think that the open-ended questions will address that. Like I said, the guiding principles, what's interesting is research has been done and it really focused on everything dual immersion except the leader. They do mention that there is PD that's needed for principals and that there's the uniqueness and like certain skill sets, but they say they do not dive into that. And so that's where that gap kind of came in. And what interested me in addressing and doing this particular study.
So I would encourage maybe a question about, because I think the behaviors then come from the mindset. So I don't know if there's a way in your questioning to say if there's a foundational mindset around willingness to change or willingness to adapt or their global perspective as they're entering in these programs. But I do think when you're coming into such a unique program like a dual language or like a magnet program, that mindset going into that work is critical.
These questions. Dr. Lane, Vera and I were working on her open-ended questions one night this week, and that is one of the things that we're working on. And I talked to Vera about we need the old school operational definitions because I'm not sure that we're trying to catch their thinking, their mindset, and we need to do a good job in the open-ended survey of explaining what some of these terms mean to try to get at their mindset. Of course, that circles back to Get Sales Google, which is, you know, what you think, what you know, what you believe, your mindset has to be what the organization needs for you to do. And so we're trying to measure some of that with the now full disclosure, we don't have it completely hammered out yet.
Sure. Oh yeah, absolutely. I'm just suggesting that Vera think about that because we know how critical that is.
Oh yes.
Yeah.
And so I sent her some feedback. What was that, Wednesday night or Wednesday night? We were working on this and we talked about we're really going to have to flesh this out more. It doesn't just need to be a reiteration of her quantitative survey. This needs to dive deeper. And one of the reasons why we talked about, and Vera should be answering these questions rather than me, one of the reasons that we talked about not doing interviews or focus groups is so that we could let them kind of dig deep into their own psyche without fear of being maligned or made fun of, or at the next principal's meeting, somebody snickering and laughing because they told on one another. We want to kind of dig into that mindset and get down, you know, kind of into their deepest thoughts. And we just didn't think that they would be willing to do that on camera, or especially not in a group.
Sure.
And so that's we're working on that piece right now, on teasing out some of that stuff in the qualitative piece.
That's great. And that kind of leads to my second question is, are the questions going to include, so, you know, the research tells us when, even with professional development for our leaders, it takes a length of time to implement a program with fidelity. So because you're interviewing experienced practitioners, are you asking any questions about their timeline of implementation that supports sustainability? How long did it take you as a dual language immersion principal to really feel knowledgeable enough to move the program forward? Does that make sense?
No, it does. It does. And I just said, I didn't add that one, but I like that. Yep. Yep. Because there are some that will be a first year and 2 year when you think about those districts and those schools. But I love the fact that you're right. Majority will be those experience, and there's a range of experience, but the timeline piece would be crucial in knowing that and being able to address, especially with the growth plan, the development of that. I like that.
Absolutely. Two other things, and I'm sorry to hog the time, so I'll try to hurry through. I have a concern about how our principals, especially our DLI principals, are feeling about teacher shortages right now. Particularly, we have found that, you know, our world language teachers, our international teachers are harder to come by. So I wonder if there's a way to frame, before you ask the questions, for them to try to set aside the current challenges of teacher shortages to really delve into their experience beyond the current barriers. So they're thinking more holistically about their experience and not focusing on the here and now.
Okay.
Vera, I'm typing this up to send to you.
Thank you.
And the only other thing I would add is that, Vera, I think this, you know, my love of magnet programs and how we feel like a lot of this work supports multiple programs.
Yeah.
I think there's an opportunity, and this is not to be captured anywhere in your presentation, but I see a lot of opportunity for the impact of this study to impact other magnet programs, and that's a real positive. So I just want to say, great work. I think that I'm looking forward to the results. I think it's going to be very impactful for all of our work.
Thank you for sharing that. Appreciate it. Appreciate the suggestions too, because, you know, we spend a lot of time working on this with principals, so I didn't consider those things.
Okay.
Vera, your 4-point Likert scale it already has been established validity and reliability, correct?
Yes.
What about your questions here?
That's what I'm working on now.
Okay.
I'll validate this one when we get it done.
Okay.
And just as I said, we wanted this one, and we wanted to be solid on this. And I told Vera to wait until after this for the qualitative piece.
Okay.
I sent her some suggestions Thursday night. Vera would already had this done a month ago by the letter, but I told her we needed to wait till this to work on this piece. This is a survey that we're using. You know, it's just
Right.
we got this one. We can't, you know, we cut it down, but this is what it is. This is the one that this committee decides what this looks like.
Right.
So we don't have, we took out things that didn't fit, but this survey is kind of a, you know, use it or not kind of thing, and we're using that one. So, but this one is to be developed as a collaborative measure between this committee. as qualitative survey should be. So I've got the notes here, I've written them down, and Dr. Payne's taking notes, and so I think we certainly will incorporate these as we flesh out. I sent her some bullets the other night. As we flesh this out, we will certainly incorporate those in there. I had a couple of thoughts myself. I think we need to make sure that we operationally define terms like internal supports, external supports, and I want also, I want to define sustainable, so that they know what, they know what they're answering. They know we're kind of, Dr. Payne and I talk about this all the time. We're kind of questioning, we're kind of cluing them, to make sure that we can tease out as much information as we can in this thing. But, I hate that we can't do that. Well, we could, but I hate that we won't be doing interviews, but it's just too much of a risk. I just don't think we'll get anything. This is not, I've got one right now that we can't get data. Because people don't want to report on themselves in front of anybody right now.
Especially leaders.
Yes,
Yeah.
exactly. They don't want anybody themselves, especially, they don't want anybody to stick or get beat with. And it's a really tough time to get data right now. When it's self-report and it's reporting that you are less than what you need to be. So that's where we are. Dr. Lane, you've got a question?
Well, I just didn't want to infer incorrectly, but I was not recommending interviews. I was only recommending added to the question sets for some of that information. I completely understand the interview situation.
Well, the example that I was making is we can tease this stuff out if we had them live, but since we don't have them live, we're going to have to do a whole lot better job on the actual questions, because we can't do the questioning and cluing if we had them live. And so the questions have got to be, they can't just be general. They're going to have to, the questions are going to have multifacets, parts, and we're going to have to really tease this thing and really develop a very strong survey, since we can't actually, or aren't going to actually be talking to these people live. We won't get, verbal and nonverbal clues from them. We're going to have to, we're going to have to do that part through the survey, which makes it a much more difficult task.
Yeah.
And so, that piece is what we're working on now. Other questions that we have?
Good job, Vera.
Absolutely.
thorough.
Very thorough. Very thorough.
It is great to see you come to this point.
Yep, it really is. All right. So Vera, if you'll wait out in the hall for just 1 minute, we'll call you right back in. All right. So does anybody have anything that we need to work on other than this survey needs to be teased out better, since we're not doing it live or not doing it in person?
This may have happened in the narrative, because this was my comment to Vera, but I didn't see it in the presentation. The only thing I would like to see is more of the timeline around those critical policies.
Okay.
She mentioned one happened in the Reagan era, but not being familiar with the history. That was just one of my notes in the narrative, is to make sure we're giving credit to those Supreme Court cases with the year, to give the reader a timeline. That would be my only other suggestion.
Good thoughts.
Okay. Lit review and deliver to chapter 2 timelines of. We'll make sure that that's there. All right, very good. All right, so I've got those. All right, Dr. Payne, you have anything?
I am good. I do like the idea of making sure that we spell out that timeline. I think that would be an added plus for the reader and help us to stay with it. No, I think I've given her a lot of feedback along the way, so I think we're good.
All right, sounds good. Dr. Rose, you have?
I'm
anything?
good.
All right, I think we're all agreed that Vera is through to the next level. I'll just have to-
Absolutely. I vote yes.
I'll just have to figure out what that is, with the new process. I
Are you
hope I can
ready?
keep up. I am. I'm ready to go.
Vera. Oh, there she is, way down low. I thought she left the building. I don't blame you. I don't blame you.
All right. As the folks are coming back, well, congratulations and welcome back. We're ready for you to move on to the next phase. And so, again, on your qualitative, we need to work on the mindset developing so we can get to the mindset of principals, timeline for their progress, and make sure they focus on not the current situation with teacher shortages, but that their answers are reflective of DLI and not the current teacher crisis that we're having. And so we'll work on those. And the only other thing is in your lit review, need to make sure, and it's probably there, the timeline of the court cases that you went through in your slide. When you went through the Lou case and all that, make sure that we have a timeline of how we progress to where we are now legally in schools. All right. Has everybody rejoined us? I think we have, so let me get that off the screen here. And I'll stop the share. Oh, wait a minute, I won't stop the share. I want to, what do I want to do? I'll have to stop it back.
Okay, then you want to stop the share to see everybody, right?
I want to do this. Do this. All right. So as we close today, I'd like to thank you all for being here, for your time and your attention, your input. Committee members, thank you for your hard work. Class members, thank you for supporting Vera and family. Mr. Woolard and Dr. Vargas, thank you both for being here. We appreciate your time today. As we close today, I have a prayer of blessing. I always like to close with prayer. So if you will pray with me today, we'll close with our prayer. Lord, thank you for your great love and blessing of our lives. Thank you that your favor has no end, but lasts for our entire lifetime. Forgive us for sometimes forgetting that you are intimately acquainted with all of our ways, that you know what concerns us, and that you cover us as with a shield. Establish the work of our hands and bring to fulfillment all that you have given us to do in these days. We pray that you would make our way purposeful, our footsteps firm out of your goodness and with love. Give us a heart of wisdom to hear your voice and make us strong by your huge favor and grace. In Jesus' name, amen. This is a prayer by Debbie McDaniel. Thank you all for being with us today. I'll close out. You can see and talk to Vera soon. Thank you again for being with us. We appreciate it. And thank you on behalf of Garvey Webb. Everybody have a good day. All right, so I'll stop my share now.
Here you have the Lau and Nichols Supreme Court case.